Nah. Okay, cool. All right. What I'm about to share with you is like what I went through. Mainly, obviously I don't have time to share everything right now, but I'm going to share just the main things that, a couple of the main things that led me to here. When I was 21, I decided to move out of my parents' house, and I was just looking for change in my life. I wasn't really sure what, but I just knew I wanted change, and so I moved out of my parents' house and I moved to Chandler, Arizona, where it was affordable. You know, I had my own apartment. You know, I had no issues, and it was easier for me. And so I moved out there. I continually worked for In-N-Out Burger, and yeah, I only knew like one family in Arizona really when I moved out there, and I kind of lost touch with them shortly after moving out there. So I kind of just became isolated very quickly, and at first it wasn't really like an issue for me, just because I was so self-motivated and all these other kind of things that I didn't really care, you know. But as time kind of started to go on, I started to develop a little bit of like loneliness, you know, I would say, or whatever it was, and it wasn't a big deal right away. I was very, like, you know, pride myself on being very mentally strong, whatever it is, and for whatever reason, I started meeting people. You know, I'm a social person. I met people, and this next part is like where I kind of like I have issues like sharing because of the judgment and because of, you know, like things that I shouldn't really care about. It's not that I care about what people think about me. It's that I'm kind of sharing such a dark part of my life that I don't want the judgment of who I kind of like used to be affect people on wanting to, like, you know, support the person that I have become. And I'm kind of just gonna go for it and not really not gonna hold back, because I feel like if I do, out of fear of like people knowing these true things about me, that I feel like it defeats the purpose of me doing this and putting myself out there if I'm gonna hold things back from the get-go. And I got into like, you know, I was smoking a lot of weed, and I got into, like, you know, selling weed, you know, and you know, transporting it, moving it, and I got to a point where I had stepped down from like full-time to part-time at my job, and I was like driving back and forth from Arizona to California, like, you know, well, before I stepped down from part-time to part-time, I was doing that. I was driving back and forth from California to Arizona. I would drive 6 hours to California, pick up my product, and I would drive back, you know, 6 hours, and I would only be in California for like 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes or whatever it was, and then I was gone. And I started doing this like twice a week, and you know, along with working a full-time job and doing that, and like just the drainingness of, like, you know, of everything. And then I was doing it, I want to make this clear because this is where where it all kind of started, where I found out why money won't make you happy. Is like I was doing it from a sole financial purpose, you know, and I was, you know, getting into my head, and, you know, and telling myself I was gonna make all this money and it was gonna make me happy, and you know, so yeah, I did that, and I continued to do it for a few months, and I was able to accrue, you know, or get you know, a good amount of money. You know, at one point I had, like, you know, close to $20,000 in cash, and I would spend my time like counting this money that, like, I thought was like making me happy. And, you know, I started buying, like, you know, I bought a couple suits, and I started spending money at, you know, places, looking, and I was looking for, like, I was looking for like companionship because I'd become so lonely, and because I couldn't have any real relationships with people that I was always dealing with, because it was such a business relationship with most of the people I was hanging around. I lost my touch for like wanting, I lost my connection with being a human, and when I started to find out who I was as a person, like when I found out that, like I really enjoyed like, people, and that, loneliness was such a sad and such a disgusting thing to deal with, and because of like the way I was raised, I felt I had like this standard to like meet or step up to, and men don't cry and all this kind of stuff, and so I never reached out to anybody. I never reached out to anybody. I kept all of it inside, and that's like, that's one of the situations that led me to the analogy of like, of getting too backed up mentally until you break. And so along with my loneliness, I started to kind of like, use, I was drinking lots and lots of alcohol. And, I was obviously smoking lots of weed, and I started getting pretty heavily, like using a lot of promethazine, codeine syrup, and I just got so deep into those things that I started to just make it a daily thing, and off the bat I felt like I had a control over it, and but I was using it. It slowly went from being, I was using it for like pleasure purposes to like using it to like numb myself out, so I didn't have to think about like loneliness or depression or all the things that were going on with my life. And at that point it wasn't even like, it was more of it was a mental thing. It wasn't really like there was like crazy things going on in my life as much as like I was dealing with a lot internally. And at one point I went to purchase a gun because I thought that's what I needed for protection in my house or whatever it was, kind of a thing. And God works in like really mysterious ways, and like I didn't realize this till maybe a few months ago, 6 months ago. And there was a time like where I got so like deep with everything, and I would have multiple nights where I would just, like I couldn't be sober, like I could not be sober. I would wake up to go pee in the middle of the night, I had to smoke, or wake up in the morning, smoke, get off of work, I had to drink, get off work at 2:30 in the morning after closing, like had to drink, like sit in the shower for an hour and just like think or cry about life. And there was one night where I became like super emotional, and I kind of like, this is where I feel I hit my rock bottom. And 90% of the time I talk about this situation, I almost become like uncontrollably like emotional, and I want to cry, and it like makes my stomach like sick to talk about it, kind of a thing. But I kind of got to a point where it's so much harder for me to like be emotional on camera because it's real. But I got to a point where I didn't really want to live anymore, and God really saved my life, because I wasn't able to purchase the gun because I was too lazy to go get an ID. In Arizona, I was too lazy to do it, so I couldn't purchase a gun. And this was way before I ever knew I was gonna end up in this position. And that night, I really wanted to take my life. Like I really wanted to kill myself, and I didn't have the opportunity to do it because God didn't allow me to buy that gun, and everything that's led up to this point in this movement is it just shows me like this is what I need to do with my life. And I want to reach the people that got to that point or at that point, or, and I mean in all walks of life. This mission is not about one particular like type of person. It's about positivity and happiness, and being bold, and pursuing happiness and passion, because life is too short, and if you just get sucked up in this world, it'll just eat you alive. And there's a lot of people out there that feel alone, that feel sad, depressed, and don't know what to do, and so afraid of change and all those things. And like, I want to reach those people, and I want those people to reach out to me if possible. Like, there's an email on the website where anybody that's going through something that wants to reach out to me or talk to me, or just express yourself. Like, there's people that care, like I care. Anyone that's involved in this movement cares. And by God not allowing that to happen, and by me not taking my life that night, I realized that the purpose of my struggle, the purpose of all of the shit that I went through up until that point, and again, it got worse for me as time went on, because I eventually moved back from Arizona to California. I moved into a friend's house and continued to struggle with like just substance, in a sense of like just drink alcohol and weed to like kind of cover up with like having a clear head, because I didn't want to have a clear head, because I didn't want to confront all the things that were going on with myself, like emotionally. And I got down to like 110 pounds. I was super malnutritioned. This happened in Arizona and carried over into California when I moved back. And eventually I moved back to my parents' house, and I got back on track. I got back on my feet. I gained weight back on me. I started going in a positive direction. Everything was going well. I was working hard at my job. I was getting close to going into management with In-N-Out, and those were the goals that I wanted to achieve. And so again, taking you back to like just my financial agenda that I thought I had to be on. I told myself, when I'm 21, I'm going to buy a new Mercedes. And I didn't get it when I was 21, but I bought a nice Mercedes when I was 23. I'm 24 now. And so life was like on its way. Everything I'd gone through my struggle. I was getting through it. I was like, I'm ready to live my life now, kind of thing. And so I bought this Mercedes, and I'm like 2 weeks away from like doing what I had to do to get into management. And it was a Monday, and I had been I was hanging out at a friend's house, one of my best friend's houses, and we were hanging out, having a good time. I was like celebrating life and the fact that like everything was about to go in, like everything had finally gone for a positive direction for me, and I was ready to like really start my life. And like adversity, these things, everything hit me again, and this one was even harder for me to deal with, because it was like more not like self-inflicted, but something that I did that I could have not done. And so we were hanging out, and we'd been day drinking, eating whatever, hanging out, and we were driving from his mom's house to his grandmother's house, and we both like to drive fast, and unfortunately me and him had been drinking and driving kind of around each other a little bit, over the years. And so I was driving, and I'm going like maybe 70 miles an hour down the street, and I hit a dip in the road, smacked my head on the steering wheel, veered into oncoming traffic, went over the sidewalk into the wall, and then back out into the street, where I ended up in a position that I had never in my entire life thought would ever happen. And I totaled my Mercedes. I got a DUI. My promotion, at that point, because of everything that was going on, it wasn't in the cards for me to become a manager. And man, it was like I was at ground zero again. Like life had just happened, and I was devastated, and like waking up the next day just surreal, not knowing what to do and where do I go from here. And to shorten up the story, I went through a whole nother tornado of, using substance to cover up these things that I had been dealing with. And I went back and forth, like month to month, between like doing good and being positive to like struggling very deeply. So and this is how I know everything happens for the reason. So I got to the point. Well, so shortly after my DUI, my parents got a divorce. My mom, my little brother, my little sister moved out of the house that we all lived in together. I really, don't, because of my driving situation and other situations, like I don't get to see my my little sister, my little brother, my mom like I would like to. I don't get to help, my mother, and I don't get to be there like I want to be because of these other things. And it sounds like an excuse, and it could be, and I try to work on that myself and not give excuses and do what I can. But I got to the point where I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my life, and so I went and I wanted to get a second job. I got a second job at Ruth Chris Steakhouse in Irvine, and so I worked full-time for In-N-Out Burger and part-time for Ruth Chris up until about a week ago, when I decided to go all in with this and pursue this and take a leap of faith and jump out of the plane and see what happens. And I got to the point where, and this is like where my struggle brought me to, even if certain things were self-inflicted or not. I got to the point where I threw my hands up and I said, you know what, I'm sick and tired of I was working all these hours and spending all this time for other people's dreams and other people's aspirations, and all because I didn't have the guts or the boldness. I didn't have the guts to do what I wanted to do because I was scared of all these unanswered questions, and it's like, when you jump out of a plane and you have a parachute on, in your head, that parachute is supposed to work. But when you take a leap of faith with something and you have no idea what's going to happen, you have no clue, you have zero clue. You're jumping out of a plane with no parachute pretty much, because there's a chance you're jumping out of a plane with a defective parachute. The burning sensation that you get inside of yourself when you start to do something that you're passionate about, and you take the steps of doing it, not just talking about it, but when you start to do it, it is one of the best feelings in the world. And it's not passion, it's not the feeling of happiness that drives me. I'm very appreciative for the struggles that I went through, not when I was in the middle of it. Now I see why I went through all those struggles. Now I use my life to help others that are stuck in the middle of that storm, that can't get out, or don't feel like there's a way out, because there is. Hopefully, like I said, with the help of everybody that backs me with this message and this movement and what I really want to do with it. The deeper this gets, the more people involved, the more we can reach, the further we can go. And I promise, guys, I'm going to do everything I can to change what's going on in a lot of people's lives in this world right now, because people just don't care. Like, as humans, we just don't care. We get stuck in this daily life thing, and it's like, I know it's a necessity, but for whatever reason, I just can't do it anymore, and I gotta try. So I'm gonna make it happen.